All right. Hi, everyone. This is a recording of the Spring 2025 Time Management Workshop. Looking at today's agenda, we are going to give our introduction so you know who's talking to you. We're going to have our first info session, which is time management and scheduling, and then a Google Calendar demo. And then our second information session on productivity, attention management, and procrastination. Then our second activity, that's goal setting practice slash generating a to-do list. And then last, we'll go through some of the questions that were asked of us during the physical workshop. All right, so who we are.
Hi everyone, I'm Cole. So nice to meet you asynchronously. I use he, him pronouns. I am currently studying business economics and public health, and I've been an academic coach at the CRC for the past 2 years.
And then, hi everyone, my name is Kaluki. I use she, her pronouns. I'm concentrating in computer science and behavioral decision sciences. I'm rounding out my first year of being an academic coach at the CRC. So first, we're going to get into time management and scheduling. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of time management, we wanted to draw a distinction between task management and time management. Task management focuses on what you will do when you have the time. This includes allocating what assignment needs to be first and priority setting in order to do so. We will be focusing on time management, which focuses on organizing your time and when things will get done, rather what will get done. This includes allocating specific time to complete certain things. One of the main ways that people choose to manage their time is through scheduling. And there are three main steps that you want to consider when scheduling. The first one is building a base. This includes listing your mandatory commitments and then filling in your non-mandatory tasks. A distinction between a mandatory commitment and a non-mandatory. For example, mandatory are your classes. If you have an extracurricular that requires attendance, those are things that you have to go to. So you would consider those mandatory. A non-mandatory task can be some of the more fun things. It could be like meeting up with a friend for lunch or taking the rep to go somewhere fun. Any of the things that are not necessarily required, but you would still like to keep in mind when looking at what you have to do for the day. With that initial schedule set, you're going to start developing a rhythm. You're going to put the first sketch of the schedule you developed into practice. While doing this, you want to take note of what works and what doesn't throughout this process. Then using those notes, you're going to move into step three, which is making adjustments. Reflect on your notes and modify your schedule as needed. Although we only list three steps, steps two and three kind of continue in a cycle until you find a schedule that truly works for you. Different time management tools that you can use are physical planners, dry erase calendars, desktop calendars, if you want something where you physically write on either like a paper or a dry erase board. And then some digital tools includes Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, Apple Calendar, and digital planners. Google Calendar with your Brown EDU email, you have a free Google account. So you have a Google Calendar already set up to do that. And now we're going to go to a scheduling demo. So we chose to use Google Calendar for this, but if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we have some templates set up for you. There is an hourly schedule, a weekly schedule, and a monthly schedule. You can use any three of these or any combination of them. I know personally, I like to have a weekly schedule and then a monthly schedule so I can look at things more in the overview. But now we will go into our Google Calendar demo.
All right, great. All right, here we are with the Google Calendar. If you want to kind of instruct me how to build out our schedule for this week.
Yeah. So the first thing, I love how we're doing this on a Friday. So the first thing we want to do is consider some of our mandatory tasks. So I know for me, one of the first things that come to mind is my courses. So we can add on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we can add a class at 2 p.m. from 2 to 2:50, and it's going to be called Clips 950. And as Cole is showing, he's also giving like a little Google Calendar introduction. So you would click, you would enter the time. And then if it's repeating, just not on one day, when you go to like that the repeating, you go to custom, and then you're able to select Monday, Wednesday, Friday. as he's showing now.
hmm That's done. There you go. And you
Hmm.
can change it so ideally it would end like when reading period begins
Hmm.
or finals. So you might say like the 16th.
Yeah. And then another mandatory commitment that I know I have is DSCI 1300. That'll be on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2:20 or 2:30.
And what was the name of the class?
CSCI 1300.
Again, going to the custom Tuesday, Thursday, and we'll have it end on the 16th. Although hopefully you wouldn't have class during that period.
Hopefully. And then another thing, this is also based off of personal preference. As you can see, Cole is using like one color for all of his courses. Some people choose to use a different color for all of his courses, for all of their courses. So it's completely up to you what you would like to do.
Yeah,
And then,
sometimes a block of blue isn't the most aesthetic.
and then Cole, if you would like to enter two of your courses, maybe, so we can have a
Yeah,
full course load.
sure. Of course. All right. So I am currently taking industrial organization. That's from 9 to 9:50, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And I'm gonna make the color green because I feel like that's very fitting for an econ class. And then I'm also taking an environmental studies class from 10:30 to 12 on Tuesday, Thursdays, and using the custom, having it end on the 16th. Great. And I'm just gonna make this one purple. Great. Here are all of our mandatory commitments for our course schedules at least.
Hmm. And then also mandatory commitments if you happen to have, like, as we mentioned earlier, if you have an extracurricular that requires attendance, that can also go here. If you have a job and you have consistent shifts, that can also
Mhm.
go here. Anything that you have to be at would be your mandatory. Non-mandatory, we can set up a gym schedule, although I know
Yeah.
some people would view that as like completely mandatory. So let's say our first class is what, at 9, so you can go to the gym at like 7 in the morning.
Okay, yeah, early morning. I mean,
Right.
you could go after your 3 p.m. class. I know the gym is kind of, it tends to be pretty free during like the 2 to 4 range.
Hmm.
You could also go in the morning before class. So yeah, let's say what, like 7:30 to 8:30? Is that
Yeah.
reasonable? Okay.
Hopefully
And
this
do we,
person.
yeah, I mean, how often are we going? Every single day?
We can go on Tuesdays and Thursdays because there's no class at 9 a.m.
Yes. So you have enough time to shower. I
Hmm.
think that's a great idea. There
And
we
then we
go.
can say, besides that, like maybe wanting to have lunch with friends at noon on Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yep. Nice way to have like a social reminder to hang out with friends throughout the week. That's great.
So if this was our actual schedule, what we would do now, it would probably be just a hair more filled out as well. But what we would probably do now is go through a week or maybe like a couple of days and take notes on what works and what doesn't. This could be, for example, well, I'm not usually hungry at 12, so lunch with friends doesn't really make sense for that time. I need to bump it up to 11. Going to the gym, I've had a lot of late nights recently, so I'm not able to make it at 7:30. Maybe I need to be going after class at 4. So we're able to adjust, and then we would repeat the cycle. Try again, make notes of what doesn't, what works and what doesn't, making adjustments until we have a schedule that we like. And that is the scheduling demo.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning into that, everyone. We're gonna now transition into our productivity, attention management, and procrastination section of the workshop. Great. And, if we were in person, I would just ask that, you spend a couple of minutes. So maybe take some time, pause this workshop, think about procrastination for you. What's one high priority task that you've been procrastinating? Maybe try to identify a reason why you've been avoiding it. Some common reasons might be you feel a bit overwhelmed, you're not sure where to start. Sometimes a fear of failure, perfectionism can also play a role. So just spend some time thinking about that, and pause your screen now. And then we're going to transition into our next portion about procrastination. So when it comes to procrastination, it's important to, think about some of the causes, which is why we kind of had that reflection activity. And we want you to think about dealing with procrastination in the context of one high priority activity that kind of like stands out for you. For me, it might be sending an email to some club members or an organization that I'm a part of. So I'm going to think about that as we're talking about procrastination. And so some common reasons, like I said, lack of motivation, feeling overwhelmed, also like time management. You feel like you're not getting to the task, you don't have enough time. Those are some common reasons. Now, when it comes to dealing with procrastination, it's important to know when to give yourself a break. And so everyone has their own physical, mental, emotional cues that we can think about as a sign of when we need to take a break. So for me, personally, my eyes start to feel droopy. It's feeling like I have to strain if I'm reading text. I feel like I'm reading the same sentence over and over again and not retaining the information. My brain might be foggy. I'm getting a little bit frustrated. So this is a sign that, I might need to switch tasks or just take a break. And so when it comes to switching tasks, this is called um, like a change of attention or also task bundling. So what that means is you might switch to um, a more enjoyable task and you're pairing that with a less enjoyable task. So an example there would be you're going to write an email while listening to music. So music would be the more enjoyable task and you're pairing it with writing an email, which is the less enjoyable task. So that's one suggestion there. Additionally, it's important to set small, reasonable, and attainable goals, as this can help with motivation. You feel like you're chipping away at a larger task, and you're chipping away at it over a longer course of time. So it helps with motivation, like I said. And this last bullet about managing mental fatigue, I think I've kind of talked about it in my discussion of body cues, but being aware of attentional fatigue and how that can interfere with learning. And in some ways, like task bundling, introducing novelty can help to stay engaged. So for me, if I'm working on a problem set for a long time, I'm not understanding, I'm getting frustrated by a certain question, I'm probably going to switch to another task, and that can help introduce novelty to stay engaged. So that's one suggestion there as well. This is a little bit continued discussion of procrastination. I think it's important to be aware that some level or degree of procrastination is completely natural. And so sometimes we get caught up in trying to be perfect and have no levels of procrastination. And in doing so, we make ourselves feel guilty. And in some ways, that can block us from moving forward. So, accepting that procrastination is natural and also learning how to identify the signs of procrastination, how to maybe combat that, whether it's giving ourselves effective breaks or switching tasks, can be really helpful in making sure that, we're not letting this completely immobilize us in a way. And again, scheduling like effective breaks and rewards for yourself can be very helpful in encouraging yourself, maintaining motivation, especially after a long week where, you've had a lot of midterms. It's important to celebrate your progress throughout the week, especially as you approach reading period. And this is another time to reflect, but just to briefly overview, we kind of want to transition into how you can design your schedule based off of your productivity levels throughout the day. So thinking like when during the day are you most versus least productive, thinking about the environment, like what are some common distractions you might encounter, thinking about how you might want to be in a certain type of setting for a certain type of assignment, and then how you can use all this knowledge to kind of structure your schedule and optimize task timing. So take a moment, pause, and really think about these questions as we move into the next portion of the workshop, which is focused on attention management. Something that is huge that I've talked about a little bit, setting small, attainable, very specific goals is helpful, especially before a study session. So, for example, maybe you spend 1 to 2 minutes and you set a very specific goal instead of a vague goal, such as I'm going to study for 30 minutes. Be specific and say, I'm going to review chapters 3 and 4, and I'm going to make outlines and turn that into a study guide. I'm going to outline key terms. I'm going to outline, key concepts. Those are some very specific goals that you can use to kind of structure your study session. And then for each assignment, you might want to spend 1 to 2 minutes to decide how you want to approach and what type of attention would be required. So, for example, if you're writing a paper, maybe spend 1 to 2 minutes thinking about how you're going to approach. So, if you're at the starting stage of writing a paper, maybe you're going to spend 30 minutes free writing. So, you just spend 30 minutes writing down all of your thoughts. It doesn't need to be coherent, but you kind of put down all of your thoughts at once, and you do that for 30 minutes. So that can be a very specific way to help you kind of structure and thinking about the attention. Okay, for writing, I know I need to be in a quiet space. Am I going to listen to music with words versus without words? Those are some questions you might want to be asking yourself, just so you make sure that you're the most productive, and you're kind of setting yourself up for success in a way. Now, thinking about attention management while studying, I think my previous discussion about the environment is huge. How can you minimize distractions? Locking away your phone is very helpful. I know at the Rock, and I'm not sure if it's at other libraries, but there's a place where you can charge your phone, so you can kind of lock it away during that time while you're studying. Out of sight, out of mind mentality that can help to minimize distractions and ensure that you're achieving the goals that you kind of set out for yourself. Also, gathering motivation is helpful. Maybe you want to spend like 5 to 10 minutes before you start a study session. You scroll on TikTok to find inspiration. You watch a TED Talk. You listen to very upbeat music. That can help as well. And as I mentioned before, managing stimuli is helpful. So maybe you create a playlist. You listen to white noise. Some people like to listen to classical music. So thinking about what will work best for you. You can also, trial and error these suggestions to see what works for you, make adjustments. That seems to be a key theme of this workshop, but you're constantly making adjustments, trying to figure out what works best for yourself. And now I just want to spend a little bit of time discussing like how to set effective goals. I think I've talked a little bit about generally like setting specific goals and is important, but here is a framework that can help you design your goals as you set out for your weekly schedule or you design your weekly to-do list. So this is the SMART framework, and just to give an example of a goal that's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. An example would be, I will complete the first draft of my research paper by Sunday at 5 p.m. by working in 90-minute sessions on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And you could get even more specific. So on Wednesday, I'm going to outline the introduction and first body of my research paper. On Friday, I'm going to outline the body two and conclusion. And then on Saturday, I'm going to spend that time proofreading and, revising my work. Those are some ways to be very specific, and it helps you kind of outline your to-do list throughout the week. So just wanted to discuss that briefly. Also, a helpful sort of reference is this Eisenhower matrix, and this helps with priority setting. So thinking about how your priorities fit into these four different buckets can help you to design your to-do list. So obviously you would put the tasks that are in the important and urgent bucket at the top of your list, and then the important but not urgent, you're going to schedule those, and then the ones at the bottom of the matrix, those are ones that you want to try to either avoid or delegate, or ones that you can do at your own discretion. So thinking about how to frame your priorities within this matrix can help you to ensure that you're getting to all of those urgent and important tasks as soon as possible. And so for this activity, we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting slash to-do list generation. So at this point in the workshop, if we were doing it in person, we would take 5 to 10 minutes. We would come back together as a group and discuss. But for now, I would just ask that you pause your screen and maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes thinking about your to-do list for the rest of the week. So thinking about how your priorities would fit into this to-do list. So thinking what's in the urgent and important bucket and how that should go at the top of your to-do list, making sure that you're specific and you're using that SMART framework that I outlined previously. Feel free to go back in the video and pause and look if that would be helpful. And yes, spend some time just thinking about the rest of your week and how you would design your to-do list based off of your priorities, what's going at the top of the list, how can you be specific, and then if we want to incorporate our scheduling concepts, think about maybe like when in the day you would want to do a certain task. If you're most productive during the afternoon, maybe scheduling a task that requires a lot of attention during that time. And again, just spend 5 to 10 minutes, pause now, and build out that to-do list. And now for the last portion of the workshop, we wanted to outline some online resources that could be helpful, and we've kind of separated them into three buckets. We have time and attention management, we have task management, and then we have some self-care apps and resources that have worked well for us. I want to highlight the ChatGPT extension in the time management bucket. This is a extension called GBT Reader, and you're able to upload PDFs and it will convert that text into an audio format. So it's like you could turn books or readings into an audio book format, and that has been really helpful for me as I tend to learn better from audio than from reading a text, or just following along. While I have that like audio to keep me on task and in time. So that's one that I wanted to highlight that has worked a lot for me. Kaluki, are there any that you would like to highlight that have been helpful for you or?
Yeah. So I started using this one after our first workshop, so it's not on the list, but it's called JOMO, like Joy of Missing Out. And it allows you to set certain times where you want to block off specific apps off of your phone. And then if you want to go in into one of the apps while you're not supposed to, you have to like wait a certain amount of time. And if you go into it multiple times, the amount of time increases. So the first time it's like 5 seconds, then it's like 10, then it's like 15. And it's actually been really, really helpful because I noticed recently I have been spending way too much time on social media and it's just been great. So I highly recommend that one.
Awesome. And for our last portion, we would have like a Q&A and wrap
Hmm.
up. But for the purposes of this asynchronous workshop, feel free to fast forward to the end where we're going to have our emails listed. And feel free, if you have any questions, to reach out to us via email. But for the last portion, we're just going to outline some campus resources. We're going to go through them pretty briefly, so feel free to pause and read all of the content that's on the slide. But for now, we're just gonna go through it from a high point of view. So on this slide, we've outlined three of the key services. Also, there is an ADHD support group that's hosted through SAS and CAPS, and we've listed the spring 2025 group times and locations. And feel free to reach out to the relevant parties if you're interested in joining. So we have CAPS. This is counseling and psychological services on campus. Um, they are able to offer support on a mostly biweekly basis, but tends to be very helpful. Also, telehealth as well. Great resource on campus. Feel free to reach out if you feel like that would be helpful for you. There's also student accessibility services. They help primarily with accommodations. Also, there's a link on the slide where you're able to see the list of apps and technology that they offer through SAS. I believe they have like a speech to text, a text to speech sort of services and apps that they provide, but feel free to look at those resources as well. And then finally, we have student support services. They help with a plethora of concerns. Would recommend reaching out to a support dean if you ever have like an academic concern or something that is kind of influencing your academics. They can be a huge help in supporting you as a student. And then finally, again, please feel free to reach out to us via email with any questions. Also, fill out this feedback form using the QR code on the screen. And other than that, thank you so much for watching this asynchronous workshop. We really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Kaluki, before we sign off?
If you have any time management specific questions, you can stop by either eyes or, well, I guess I should say you first, Cole or eyes, um, academic coaching drop-in hours, um, or just any academic coaching drop-in hours. If for those of you guys who don't know where the CRC or Curricular Resource Center is, if you know where the Center for Career Exploration is, we are on the bottom floor of that. And then there's usually an academic coach there any time of the day between like 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. sounds about right. So if you want any help on time management, you can either seek out either Cole or I's help or any of the other academic coaches will be able to help as well.
Yes, and the open hour schedule will be listed on our website, Brown CRC, and you'll be able to find a list or schedule of the open hours. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram at Brown Academic Coaching. We have all of our workshops posted there and also our open hours. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest events and what's going on around campus, feel free to follow us on Instagram as well. Otherwise, again, really appreciate your time. We have, some more emails on for resources on campus, but again, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for tuning in and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey, thank you guys.